This interview is brought to you by Nutanix. Nutanix makes extending to the public cloud simpler, faster, and more cost-effective by eliminating complicated application dependency mapping and refactoring. See how at nutanix.com/govcio.
Hi, we're at AWS Summit. I'm sitting here with Greg O'Connell, Senior Director of U.S. Federal at Nutanix. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's get started. Government agencies, they're going through so much tech change right now, and they prioritize things like cloud modernization, data. Some of the new directives out there are impacting how they're thinking about cybersecurity in those efforts. So what are some of the federal IT modernization trends that you're seeing from your perspective?
Sure. Thanks for asking the question. So there's three key trends that we're seeing out there in the market right now that are big surprise right out of the gates. Gen AI, hot topic, modern applications at the edge, and then hybrid multi-cloud. So we're going to kind of dig into each of those. Sort of weaved into all of that as well, though, are pretty significant security concerns. And it's interesting as we're sort of in this state that we are today, and you look back on history, and I hate to date myself like this, but go back to like the mid-90s and think about the first killer app on the internet, the browser, right? It brought this huge wave of productivity, new applications, all sorts of access to new information that didn't exist before. And all kinds of new ways of going about conducting business through this new idea of the internet. So even then, there were major security issues that kind of rippled through that. So considerations around not just, policy at the perimeter and things like that, but information assurance, the whole gamut of security issues that come with it. And even back then, there were distributed denial of service attacks and different types of ways that the bad actors would figure out how to bring a server to its knees so you couldn't conduct commerce. It's gotten much, much more sophisticated today. So we can probably talk a little bit more about that as well. But specific to Gen AI, if we kind of talk about these trends. So if we start with the idea and the data from IDC that between now and 2026, we're going to see 750 million new applications hit the scene. And much of this is modern applications, I should say, containerized. And so that's more applications than we've seen in the last 40 plus years. And so with that comes quite a bit of decision around where these workloads belong. Right now, kind of looking at this hybrid multi-cloud world, Gartner has also put out a study that talks about by 2027, 85% of all workload placements will basically be in the wrong place, right? So now, as for hybrid multi-cloud, it's really kind of an accidental hybrid multi-cloud world that we're in the sense that this explosion of applications and all of these new requirements are driving this need to immediately, whether it's cost or security, policy at the given agency, cloud first versus cloud smart. We've got this big contract with one of the big hyperscalers. Let's put it all there. That doesn't always mean it's the right place to put it. And so when you look at these modern applications, we see more and more that it isn't necessarily the right place. So then we talk about the edge, right? And we start to get into the subject of modern applications at the edge. This Gen AI explosion is bringing so many of these applications and so much more capability for processing at the edge. And that's where we got to really kind of pay close attention to the different types of security threats and issues that come about from that amount of applications in such a short period of time.
Sure. Cybersecurity is on everyone's mind right now. So I know you talked a little bit about that, but tell me more.
Sure. So it's not just general security concerns like we talked about with this earlier era, but ransomware, much more sophisticated malware than we've seen in the past. Then we also have the issues that have been brought about by COVID with more and more devices work from home and policies were loosening up around allowing folks to bring their own device or use their own device to get on the network. And so this is where we start to see the importance of zero trust, right? And that's another really hot topic that probably fits up there in the trends that we talked about earlier. So it's important to realize that ZTA is not a single solution, right? It starts with the perimeter and really the ground floor. And you have to remember that, in that early internet era that we talked about, it really was just sort of securing at the perimeter. Now it's much more sophisticated. You've got a variety of different devices that are accessible, user policy inside the network. So from a Nutanix perspective, we've been focused on security from the ground up from the very beginning. And there's a lot of things in the early days that we did with an understanding. Our early on first customer was actually in the government, in the Intel community. So we understood the importance of the different security policies and information assurance requirements and built-in features like automated STIGs and microsegmentation. We're listed on the DODIN APL, the kinds of things that are sort of table stakes in terms of working with government. So we've been very careful and understanding and thoughtful about designing those security measures into the platform and really thinking about in this new era, like with microsegmentation and the lateral security considerations between and across your VMs versus just that perimeter-like security that you see.
Sure. So going back to the AI talk, I know that's also on everyone's mind. Gen AI, you were hitting on that a little bit. But what are you seeing around, I guess, adoption and management of these AI tools in government?
Yeah, that's a interesting question, and the trends there are evolving daily. I literally just came across some research the other day from Constellation Research that talks about, it actually quotes Jensen Huang from NVIDIA and Tom Siebel from C3 AI and our CEO, imagine that, Rajiv Ramaswamy. And it talks about, Jensen actually refers to them as AI factories. And it's interesting because, again, and it's back to the trend of modern applications at the edge. So what we're seeing is there's, in the world of AI, you're looking at the big modeling, the large learning language models, you're training, and a lot of modeling that tends to create and generate a lot of data. The hyperscaler platform with the elasticity is a very great environment for that. But then at the edge, that's where the inferencing happens. And that's where like NVIDIA has the NIM framework, the NVIDIA microservices platform that allows you to do a lot of the processing at the edge. And so that's where it needs to be done because it's literally a latency issue in terms of performance and bandwidth. And so this article talked a great deal about these AI factories and this sort of data centers becoming cool again, right, on-prem, for whether it's a traditional data center, not so much, but more like the forward area or at the very tactical edge in the DoD example or the government example. So that's an interesting development that we're seeing around AI. But the general trend there is, again, it's really training models in the cloud and the inferencing at the edge that we're seeing. Some of the headwinds that we're tracking, and I think are pretty obvious, return on investment is a big one. And when you think about the number of ineffective apps that are being created out there, and again, this is kind of like the Mark Twain quote, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And so back to that early internet era, how many examples can we think of startups that had this amazing solution with no real problem to solve? And we saw these startups with the money was just coming easily through the VCs and creating all of these companies that really didn't net anything productive or a value or any real return on investment in the business world. So we're going to see, I think, that same trend here in this Gen AI example with a lot of applications that are looking for a home, and the ROI component is going to be very important.
Definitely. Never thought we would get Mark Twain in here, but here we are.
Not sure where that came from.
So talk to me about some of the vendor disruption you're seeing around enterprise virtualization, and I guess how does that apply to the government market?
So we are in a very dynamic situation right now. And this acquisition that we've seen in our industry is one of the largest we've seen in a long time and the most significant. And it's really been a wake-up call for government in the sense of making sure you don't have yourself too dependent on one vendor. And so from a Nutanix perspective, that's where we've always been very focused on platform choice. And from that standpoint, whether it's the hypervisor, whether it's the hardware platform that you're looking to deploy on, whether it's the cloud environment. So this kind of gets back to the concept of hybrid multi-cloud. And one of the things Nutanix prides itself on, and that we've done a very good job in terms of what we bring to market, is the ability to allow you to have, say, one of those cool data centers on-prem, an AI factory maybe, and you're doing your deployment on-prem, but then there's a need for bursting or DR or some other example where you need to move some of that workload or multiple workloads to the cloud. Well, how do you do that? So the ability to provide a seamless mobility of those applications and workloads to a cloud environment or back, or different types of platforms, all from the same user experience, is the holy grail. And so that's what Nutanix brings to the equation. We have examples of customers, government tax authority with seasonal bursting requirements, and they've been a long-time Nutanix customer using us extensively on-prem, and then they have certain seasonal requirements to burst to cloud. And so we offer that capability from the same platform where you can manage Nutanix software in, say, AWS GovCloud, all from the same user experience. So additionally, 3 key parties have been impacted of this acquisition or by this acquisition. So you've got customers, industry partners, as well as OEM providers that have all had different relationships contractually and licensing-wise with Broadcom. And so what that's leading to, in all of those cases, there's 3 primary issues that they're all experiencing and concerned about, which is pricing, vendor dependency, and the actual migration. So what we're seeing is there's this, and this gets back to the concern about being locked in, the dependency on one vendor. And a lot of agencies are recognizing that we really need a plan B. And so the good news is that Nutanix in particular, there's alternatives out there, and we've actually been migrating and helping customers for the past decade with transitions. We have an environment, again, back to platform choice, where you can actually run your VMware ESXi hypervisor through the same, we can manage that through our same platform as our AHV hypervisor, which is an alternative hypervisor to the VMware hypervisor. AHV is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. It's been out for quite some time. Our earliest government customers, as early as 2015, 2016, have adopted and have been running their mission-critical workloads using AHV. Many also running VMware's hypervisor, many running both, and many have migrated. So over the course of this past decade, Nutanix has developed the capability. We actually call it Move. It's a feature, pretty tricky, right? Move, just move your applications, your workloads, or at least your hypervisor through a 2-3-click type operation where you can migrate your hypervisor from ESXi to AHV or back to ESXi, as well as support for other hypervisors. So that's the kind of flexibility and the freedom of choice that Nutanix is really built on. Okay, so one of the ways that Nutanix is helping customers, we call it the 3 C's. There's constrain, convert, and construct. And so any of our customers could be on any part of that spectrum or involved in all 3. So if we kind of back into this and you think about constrain, the agencies buckled down. The pricing changes are coming. The licensing models are changing, but they're in the middle of some very critical application development or something to be deployed. And so they are not looking to make any immediate change. They need to stay focused on the priority at hand. And then the convert is where we see customers that are looking to maybe simultaneously start piloting or a migration plan around, hey, let's get started over here and get comfortable with this new environment and begin migrating workloads today. Construct is the interesting one because that's where we're seeing some of our customers actually looking at the opportunity to start fresh. And this gets back to this modern application development environment that we're seeing with Kubernetes and Nutanix recently. We had our .next conference in Barcelona. We released our NKP, Nutanix Kubernetes platform, which we've been working on for quite some time. This is an environment that allows you to build very quickly and easily these modern applications, but also provides a lot of that flexibility and security that you're looking for in the data center as well. And so customers could be anywhere on that constrain, convert, or construct journey, and Nutanix offers the services and capability to help customers through that.
Any final thoughts?
Sure. So in terms of wrap up, as we discussed, organizations are evolving to the next phase of IT. We're seeing it very, very clearly with this whole modern application era, containerization. Many of these Gen AI applications we talk about, really the majority, if not all, none of them are running VMs. It's all containerized, and that's a requirement as part of the flexibility required in a lot of this edge-based processing that we've been talking about. So freedom of choice it's not a nice to have. It's absolutely required in this day and age. And it, again, talks back to the circumstances with many of the government customers find themselves in right now with too much dependency on one partner or vendor. So this really means building IT to adapt versus building IT to last, and making investments in modern platforms that were built for the kind of work being done today, but are flexible enough to evolve with your agency's requirements.
We've hit on a lot, so thank you so much for the insight and look into some of the trends that are impacting government.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.